Stories said his wives simply disappeared, but behind one locked door waited a secret that would survive for 15 seconds.
Conomor! The prophecy speaks of a curse! The man with the blue beard brings the storm.
History remembers empires. Midnight Relics remembers what they buried.
Imagine living in a world where a marriage proposal could feel more like a death sentence. A world where castles rose above the countryside, not as symbols of protection, but as warnings. And where one man's name became so feared that centuries later, parents were still using it to frighten their children. Most people know Bluebeard as a fairy tale villain, a wealthy nobleman with a forbidden room and a terrible secret. But long before the story entered books and bedtime stories, there may have been a real man hiding behind the legend. A ruler whose reputation became so dark that history itself struggled to separate fact from nightmare. This is the story of the man many historians believe inspired Bluebeard, and why his name survived for nearly 1,500 years. The 6th century was not a gentle time. The Roman Empire had collapsed in Western Europe, leaving behind fractured kingdoms, abandoned roads, and a landscape dominated by ambitious warlords. Along the rugged coast of Brittany, power belonged to whoever could seize it and hold it. Small rulers fought constant wars. Alliances changed overnight. Villages could disappear in a single raid. In this unstable world, one regional ruler began gathering territory at an alarming pace. His name was Conomor. Even among violent men, he stood apart. Historical records describe him as powerful, feared, and politically ruthless. He controlled strategic lands, commanded warriors, and maintained influence over neighboring rulers. But military strength alone was not what made him infamous. Stories began spreading across the countryside. Stories whispered in monasteries. Stories shared around fires after dark. Stories about women. According to local traditions, Conomor had married several times, and somehow, his wives kept disappearing. No public funerals, no explanations, no graves that people could point to with certainty. One wife would appear beside him at feasts and ceremonies. Months later, she would simply be gone. Then another would take her place, and another after that. In a violent age where death was common, people still noticed when the same pattern repeated itself. The rumors grew darker with every telling. Some believed he murdered his wives. Others claimed he feared something even more dangerous than enemies or invading armies: a prophecy. According to medieval legends, someone had foretold that Conomor would eventually die at the hands of his own son. Whether the prophecy was real hardly mattered. People believed it. And once a powerful ruler begins believing a prophecy, history can become very dangerous, because prophecies create fear, and fear often creates monsters. The most famous woman connected to this story was a young noblewoman named Tryphine. Unlike many details surrounding Conomor, Tryphine became deeply embedded in regional tradition. The story says she was the daughter of a respected noble family. When Conomor sought her hand in marriage, refusing him was not simple. Powerful men rarely heard the word no, and powerful men with armies almost never accepted it. So the marriage took place. At first, everything seemed normal, perhaps even surprisingly normal. Conomor was reportedly courteous, generous, attentive. The image did not match the terrifying rumors, but that contradiction is exactly what makes the story so unsettling. The most dangerous people in history rarely introduce themselves as monsters. They introduce themselves as protectors, as leaders, as charming men with reassuring smiles. For a time, Tryphine may have believed the stories were exaggerated, until she began noticing things that didn't make sense. Questions nobody wanted to answer, servants who avoided certain conversations, references to women who seemed to have vanished from memory, a household that behaved as if parts of its own history had been deliberately erased. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Different versions tell it differently. Some describe a hidden chamber, others mention secret evidence. Still others focus on revelations from people inside the castle. The details vary, the conclusion does not. Tryphine became convinced that the rumors were true. The wives who came before her had not simply disappeared, they had died. And she believed she would be next. The legend grows even darker from there. According to tradition, Tryphine learned she was pregnant. If Conomor truly feared the prophecy, A future son would represent exactly the danger he wanted to avoid. The child would not be a blessing. The child would be a threat. Suddenly, every strange behavior seemed to make sense. Every missing wife, every unanswered question, every warning hidden between the lines. The castle that once looked like a fortress became a prison, and the husband who once seemed kind became something else entirely, a man at war with his own future. Tryphine fled. At least that's how the legend remembers it. She escaped into the countryside, while Conomor pursued her. What followed exists somewhere between history and myth. Medieval storytellers transformed the chase into something almost supernatural. Some accounts portrayed Conomor as cursed, others compared him to a beast. Over generations, the man became less human and more symbol, a living embodiment of fear itself. Eventually, according to the legend, Tryphine was captured, and the ending turned tragic. Yet the story did not stop there. Religious traditions claimed miracles followed, saints entered the narrative, divine intervention appeared, and Tryphine herself became associated with sainthood. For believers, this transformed the tale from a story of murder into one of faith and redemption. But for historians, something even more interesting happened. The legend survived. Not for decades, not for centuries, for over 1,000 years. That raises an important question. Why? Most medieval rulers are forgotten. Their names vanish, their castles collapse, their stories disappear. Conomor did not disappear. His reputation endured. Generation after generation continued repeating the same central idea. A powerful man, a trail of missing wives, a terrible secret hidden behind respectability. Centuries later, French author Charles Perrault introduced the world to a character named Bluebeard. The details were different, the setting changed, the story became a fairy tale. But the core elements remained strangely familiar. A wealthy husband, a forbidden secret, dead wives hidden from view, a woman who uncovers the truth. Whether Bluebeard was directly based on Conomor Rema, history rarely provides absolute certainty, but the similarities are difficult to ignore. What makes this story fascinating is not whether every detail happened exactly as described. Almost certainly, some details were exaggerated. Others were reshaped by religion, folklore, and centuries of retelling. The real mystery is why people felt compelled to keep telling it. Legends survive because they express fears that refuse to die. The fear of power without accountability. The fear of secrets hidden behind wealth and status. The fear that the smiling face presented to the world may conceal something far darker beneath. In that sense, Bluebeard never truly belonged to one century, or one castle, or even one man. He became a warning, a symbol, a shadow passed from generation to generation. And somewhere on the windswept coast of Brittany, where ruins still overlook the sea, the line between history and legend remains as thin as ever. Perhaps there really was a warlord whose wives vanished. Perhaps there was only a story that grew larger with every telling. Or perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. A real man, a real fear, and a legend so powerful that 15 centuries later we're still trying to unlock the door. Historical significance. The story of Conomor survives because it sits at the crossroads of three worlds: history, legend, and fear. Most rulers from the 6th century have been reduced to fragments. A name in a manuscript, a broken inscription, a ruined wall disappearing beneath moss and rain. Conomor is different. His memory refused to stay buried, partly because there was a real man behind the legend. Medieval records confirm his existence. He appears in Breton traditions, church writings, and regional histories. He was powerful enough to leave a mark on his age. But historical figures do not become monsters simply because they were powerful. Something else happened. Over centuries, people began attaching their anxieties to his name. Every generation inherited a slightly darker version of the story. The brutal ruler became a tyrant. The tyrant became a murderer. The murderer became a monster. And eventually, the monster became Bluebeard. That transformation reveals something important about how history works. Facts survive through documents, but emotions survive through stories. Most people today have never heard of Conomor, yet millions know Bluebeard. The fairy tale outlived the history, the myth consumed the man, and perhaps that is exactly what the people who told the story intended, because Bluebeard was never just about one nobleman. He represented a universal fear, the fear of discovering that the person you trust most is hiding something terrible, the fear that evil can wear expensive clothes, the fear that danger sometimes speaks softly. That idea has appeared again and again throughout history. In royal courts, in political movements, in religious institutions, in wealthy families, and in ordinary homes. The details change, the warning remains the same. Look beyond appearances, ask the forbidden question, and never assume that power and virtue are the same thing. What makes the Bluebeard legend remarkable is that it survived nearly 1,500 years while preserving that warning. The castles changed, the kingdoms vanished, empires rose and fell, languages evolved, yet the story endured. Not because people remembered every detail, but because they remembered the feeling of standing before a locked door and knowing that opening it might change everything. Perhaps that is why historians still debate Conomor today. Not because we expect to uncover a final answer, but because the uncertainty itself is fascinating. Was he truly a serial killer hidden inside a medieval court? Was he merely a ruthless ruler whose enemies transformed him into a monster after his death? Or did the truth lie somewhere between those extremes? We may never know. The centuries have taken too much. Documents were lost, witnesses vanished, facts dissolved into folklore, and folklore hardened into legend. What remains is a silhouette, a dark figure standing at the edge of history, part man, part myth, part warning, and somewhere along the windswept coast of Brittany, where ancient stones still watch the sea, the shadow of Bluebeard lingers, not because people remember exactly what happened, but because they remember what the story tried to teach them, that some doors are locked for a reason, and sometimes the most frightening thing waiting behind them is not a monster at all. It's the truth. Thought-provoking ending. The real mystery of Bluebeard is not whether. The real mystery of Bluebeard is not whether the room existed. It is not whether the wives were real. And it is not even whether Conomor inspired the legend. The real mystery is why humanity keeps telling this story. Century after century, generation after generation, because every age creates its own Bluebeards. Different names, different faces, different castles, yet somehow the same secret hidden behind the same locked door. Perhaps that is why the legend survived when so many others disappeared. Not because it tells us about the past, but because it tells us something uncomfortable about ourselves, about what we choose not to see, about the warnings we ignore, about the doors we are afraid to open. And maybe that is why after 1,500 years, the door remains slightly open, still waiting, still inviting, still asking the same question. If you knew the truth was waiting on the other side. Lessons for us from this history. Power without accountability becomes dangerous. Even the most powerful leaders can become a threat when no one is willing or able to question their actions. Appearances can hide uncomfortable truths. A charming smile, wealth, or status does not guarantee good character. What people hide often matters more than what they show. Fear can create monsters, real or imagined. Whether Conomor was truly guilty or not, fear and rumors shaped his legacy for centuries, reminding us how powerful narratives can be. Never ignore warning signs and unanswered questions. History repeatedly teaches that silence, secrecy, and blind trust can allow dangerous situations to grow unchecked. These 4 lessons resonate strongly with modern audiences because they apply not only to medieval rulers, but also to politics, institutions, businesses, and everyday life. History leaves behind ruins, legends, and unanswered questions. But sometimes the most fascinating mysteries are the ones we'll never fully solve. Was Conomor truly the man behind the Bluebeard legend? Or did centuries of fear transform a real ruler into a monster? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring the dark mysteries, forgotten legends, and hidden truths of history, subscribe to Midnight Relics and join us on our next journey into the shadows of the past. Because every relic has a story, and some stories refuse to stay buried.